From meeting room wisdom to bestseller lists, changemakers to chapter ones, this is where expertise meets legacy. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello, everybody. Imagine receiving a phone call that changes everything. Not just your day, not just your year, but the entire trajectory of human civilization. Now imagine you have exactly 2 weeks to decide what matters most. Would you save yourself, your family, or would you risk everything for love? Well, today on Authors on Mission podcast, we're diving deep into the mind of a man who doesn't just write about impossible choices, he lives by them. G. Michael Hopf has penned over 40 novels, built a publishing empire, and challenged an entire generation to ask themselves, in a world where comfort has made us complacent, what will it take us to forge strong again? Welcome to the Authors on Mission podcast, where we don't just celebrate successful authors, we decode the blueprint behind their mission-driven approach to storytelling and life. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, and today we're exploring how hard times don't just create strong characters, they create the authors brave enough to write them. Joining us is USA Today best-selling author G. Michael Hopf, whose latest novel, Cries of a Dying World, asks the ultimate question: what would you do if you only had 2 weeks to live? Without further ado, welcome to the show, G. Michael Hopf.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you so much for having me on here. I really appreciate it. It's an honor.
Of course. And I'm really excited to dive into this novel too and talk about your life and your writing process and everything in between. You know, of the 40 novels, I think this one is really compelling they all are, but this one is a really strong one because it makes us that question: what would you do if you only had 2 weeks to live? So I'm really excited to talk about that. However, before we dive too much into all of the novels, I think it's important that we get to know a little bit about you and what led you into the writing world. How did you go from, military to best-selling author? What made you decide to start writing, and when did you realize storytelling was your calling?
It's always a good question, and I'd always been a big reader all my life. I think that's I think that's very important on the resume for authors and writers, is to be readers as well. I think it actually hones our skills. And mine came from just being a reader so much. I wanted to find something in a book that I wasn't getting. There was this complex plot that I was wanting to see, and I was really reading a lot of apocalyptic fiction. This is in the 2000s and kind of early 2000 teens or whatever, and I really wanted something, and I just wasn't finding it. Anyway, so I just decided, if I can't find it, why don't I just write it? And so with that in mind, I'd also done a children's illustrated book that that actually is officially my first book. And that was just kind of something born out of me reading to my daughters when they were little. I'd always been a storyteller, so I'd always make up stories and things like that. So once I created that, again, I just realized idea, apply kind of consistency and discipline, and now I have something in my hand. So why don't I apply that to a novel? Because there's a book that I've been wanting to see or wanting to find, and I can't find it. So let's write it. So that was kind of the birth of the first book of the New World series, called The End. And I did it. The book did really well. I had an agent at the time. That relationship didn't go very well. I fired her and then set about to self-publishing and using KDP back in the day. And then the book just took off virally. And 6 months later, I was signed to a large book deal with Penguin Random House, based solely on just how well the book was doing.
That's an incredible story, going from just self-publishing, throwing it out there, to being picked up by a major publisher. That's really inspiring, I think, for all authors out there today listening. Really amazing stuff. You must have something truly talented in your blood, and all the inspiration that makes these books so incredible. I'm really excited to dive into that then. And I also understand you founded Beyond the Fray Publishing as well. So that's really cool. Not only are you involved with Random House, but you have your own too. Yeah,
that was later on. I had gotten into, for lack of a better phrase, like flipping content. I was trying to find ways of finding like video content or podcast. And I was like, okay, is this podcast like telling a story? Because if it's telling a story, then why don't we take that content and then flip it into another medium, flip it into a book? And so I partnered with Shannon DeGrow, who's got a podcast called Into the Fray, very prominent, very successful podcast that's very genre specific for paranormal, unsolved mystery, supernatural, things like that. And she would get like guests on her show that would just kind of tell their personal encounter stories with whatever kind of out there, again, paranormal, supernatural stuff. And so we got together and I said, why don't we just do our own book? And we did. And then she was getting such a large response from a lot of people in her space. Again, that's the paranormal, kind of cryptid, UFO, ancient mysteries, all those kind of like, it's interesting. Like when you're in kind of a genre specific, you end up knowing a lot of people. You end up meeting other people that have the same interests in that kind of, space. And so she was really prominent in the space. A lot of people are asking her, it's like, wow, your book is really great. How did you do it? That gave us the question. I was like, well, why don't we just create our own publishing company? There seems to be a need, right, for this, and strictly just doing nonfiction that deal in those specific genres. And so that was the birth of Beyond the Fray. We launched that in 2019 and have done fairly well. We've really created a nice space. We're like one of the prominent names as far as like producing and publishing nonfiction paranormal books, just because I think we deliver. We take the author in mind. We take care of the author, and because I came to it as an author myself, and we just produce very high quality books, and we know how to market them well because we stick to what we know. We are into the paranormal or into that kind of those topics. We don't kind of venture to publish everything. We just niche down on those.
Right, but it's multiple genres though too. It's the post-apocalyptic. You have westerns. We have horrors.
Oh yeah, that's my own personal brand. But then
understood.
That's my own personal brand of writing novels. But then when it came to doing Beyond the Fray again was born out of Shannon LeGros doing this one book, which then launched into, why don't we just do a publishing house that just caters to these genre specific kind of. Because my name brand wasn't associated with that world, but hers was. So we really leaned on her connections, and it just really blew up and did really, really well. And so that's how that so I came to the relationship with her, like knowing how to write and knowing how to market and just knowing how to produce a book. Like I know how to produce a book. I can take someone's book, someone's idea, and take it from concept all the way to having a book in your hand. So.
Understood. And I can see how, by making it more of a narrowed focus for publishing house, you probably have a wider audience of people who know what to expect and they're excited for these books in this specific niche. And so I can see how that's a benefit in that regard too.
100%. I think it's important for, like, if you're going to get into publishing, you have a niche and you hone in on that. You can't be everything to all people. So there's an audience for everything, right? So be the master of that, whatever you choose, whatever that audience is, focus in on that and be as good as you can with that space. Even the big players, like I'm with Penguin, but I'm actually with a smaller imprint that they own called Plume. And Plume was doing more, they do more of the trade paperback. And they were doing, like at the time back in, 10 plus years ago, Plume was primarily doing lots of action adventure, those kind of genres specifically. When you look at Plume. But if you look at all the big players, they all have smaller imprints that are very niche oriented. They go after whatever, thrillers or romance or you name it. I think it's important for, if you're going to open a publishing company, to find that niche and then go after it.
Definitely. And there's always this quote that I like to say, and when we talk about this type of subject, is you don't just write for everybody. You write for somebody. It's only one person. Target it to that person, and that's how you can be successful.
I think you should first write for yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think you write the book that you want to read. Mm-hmm. I think, by the way, then there's this authenticity that comes forward with it. And I sometimes owe that to the success of the end. I wanted to write the book I wanted to read, and that's why I fired my first agent. I fired her because she wanted to make lots of structural changes to the book. And I had already just organically at the time knew that I had beta readers. I just thought, it's like, by the way, I didn't understand publishing at all. I did not know what I was doing. I was like, maybe I should get a group of people, like a cross section, because I looked at it as a business, which is very important, by the way. All writers need to look at what they're doing as a business. And what I mean by that is not changing how you write. It's how, once the book is done, then how you market that book. That's kind of the business hat, not trying to write for everybody. Write what you want to read and know your audience. But yeah, she just wanted to kind of change things. I got a group of beta readers that had read it. They loved it. And they were kind of my demo. They were the kind of demographic that I knew were going to like the book. So she was trying to get it so it could fit nicely and neatly in a publishing house. for whatever reason. And then I knew this audience. And so I said, the relationship isn't going to work out. So I let her go. And I was like, everyone's always thought, wait a minute, you know how hard it is to get an agent? Much less I got one, and then I fired her. And then I went to self-publish, and then 10 days later, the book took off. And then I ended up with one of the biggest publishing houses anyway, regardless, without an agent, because there's two ways of getting, or actually three ways of getting a big publishing deal. I can dive into that later, but I just happened to go down the one path that's it's foregone conclusion, you'll get a publishing contract. And that is sales. Sales, sales, sales.
Exactly. And, it's really cool, though, because that's just kind of the way fate worked out for you. And if you weren't working well with one person, there's no need to stick with them. No matter how hard it is to get an agent, you need to make sure that you have the right partnerships that are going to
100%.
benefit you and your brand and your book. So, this is all great stuff. And I'm really excited to have learned more about Beyond the Fray. And to anybody listening today, if you're interested in this niche, it's the perfect way to find new books, new content. So definitely check that out. But I would love to transition now into Cries of a Dying World, which is the book I think is, wonderful for us to discuss today. So let's dive right in. What drew you to this particular topic?
Well, it is apocalyptic and, kind of end of the world. That's kind of what I'm known for. And I've always had a fascination with. It's my fascination with it, and this will connect to your question. My fascination with it is not just watching kind of collapse or the end of things, but just how people are dealing with it. I've always been curious by the human condition, by why people make the decisions that they make. And that was born out of a situation happened to me years ago when me and two of my coworkers were all fired at the same time. We were making some good money at the time, and we all got fired at the same time. And so we had one event that created three different emotional responses instantly. This one guy, Kevin, got really angry and started throwing stuff around. And then the other guy, Scott, started crying. And I was kind of laughing about it. And I still remember that because it was like, wait a minute, you had one kind of powerful thing. We all just got laid off, like instantly fired, like don't show up at work. And there goes our paychecks. And again, but yet three different responses to one event. And so that's always stuck with me. And then so I've looked at kind of apocalyptic events. So say a grid down scenario. Say the grid collapses, but not everyone acts the same. Some people panic and they freak out. Some people riot. Some people go home because they're already prepared. They don't care. And so then that led me to this ultimate conclusion. Like, what if the event is so big, it's like an extinction level event. That's an asteroid that's coming to hit. And everyone pretty much is going to have the same fate. What do you do with the time? We all know we're going to die. That's a fact, but we don't think about it daily, right? We just kind of go about our day, even though knowing in the back of our head, there's at any moment something can happen, but eventually, the clock just runs out. That really got me thinking. It's like, well, what if there was something that's going to happen like an asteroid impact, and there's without a doubt it's coming. There's nothing you can do so the control freaks really upsets them because you can't control it. It's going to happen. This moment, this time, right there, everything's going to end. What do you do? How do you conduct yourself? How do you go about your life? And so there's kind of that exploration of that in there. Is this one, the main protagonist, his name is Ethan. He'd lost his wife before, and that had estranged him from his son. And so what was he going to do? He decided he was going to try to patch that up. But there's some other things. I don't want to give a bunch of plot lines away or spoilers, but and then along his journey, when he's kind of, getting back with his son, he's meeting with different people along the way, and they're all uniquely going through what they're going through: denial, anger, sadness. I mean, it's just all this range of emotional states people are in because of it. People really find God. Some people are angry at God because of it. Because what kind of God would do this? So all these questions are being asked, and all these, I've always found it interesting how people act. And so I really wanted to explore that. So the book itself is very emotionally driven. And again, really explores people's connections to death, and then also how they live their lives and how they treat one another.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of show a varied response between all the different characters that, happen in this book. Some turn to God, some turn to violence, some turn to denial. You really have a lot of realism in there, I noticed. And I guess I'm just curious to know, how did you come up with these reactions? Is it based on intuition? Did you do a little bit of research? Was there a survey that you conducted that people kind of threw ideas out there? I'm kind of curious.
I just go through my own life experience. I've had an interesting life. I've done quite a few things, from the Marine Corps, being deployed in combat, to other various jobs, and where you could say life and death are very traumatic or stressful situations are ongoing, and how people conduct themselves in those situations. And so I was just based upon, again, like the memory of me, Scott, and Kevin being fired that one morning. Just, again, it's always stuck with me. It's like, wow, it's so interesting. Like, you've got these three responses from one, because it was all the same. But then again, if you really start digging in, it's like, why was Scott crying? Why was he so upset? Was he in such a unique financial position that it is, there's more than like his response. Just, you can actually kind of peel back the onion a little bit, and he's reacting that. And also then some people are just programmed when they have a traumatic event, they go to that. That's like their default. They go to anger when there's a default response to something that's outside their control. And so I've always been fascinated. And so I've seen a lot of those events, a lot of that situations in my life. And so I just, applied all those in the book, just personal experience.
That's really cool. I knew you had a huge backstory coming into this, but to have based it solely on your own life experiences, that's really interesting, and that you've kind of witnessed that firsthand. I'm wondering which one would you be going towards if it was in your own shoes? I'm sure you considered the question yourself. What would you do if you only had 2 weeks left to live? What would you do?
I already know what I would do. I lean right into family, because I've just known just family is everything, and relationship is everything. Everything is just stuff. I believe that wholeheartedly. Like, if things are nice, it's nice to have stuff. It's nice to have nice homes and things. But at the end of the day, it's just stuff, and it can get destroyed. The one thing you can't really take away is the power of love and in human connection and relationship. It transcends death, is my belief, and all the other stuff doesn't. And I think you can look at a lot of ancient texts and ancient wisdom that discuss that as well. They knew that these things are just material objects, but there's something about the human consciousness and connection, and specifically the vibrational thing we call love, that really binds us and connects us to one another. So I would lean into my family, and we would just, celebrate that we were all together. We're all together at this one unique time around the sun. This is when we lived. We all happened to live at the same time and be together, and just celebrate that until it all came to an end.
I think that's really sweet, and it makes everybody else wonder if they would do the same too. I'm sure that's probably a pretty strong response that many people would go towards. Human connection is above all else. I feel like a lot of people might be in denial so much they keep going to work, or like, I still have to finish this project before the 2 weeks are up, like that sort of thing. At least that would be like my first instinct. I'd be like, but what about, all these clients waiting on me? So I feel like it's kind of goes many different ways, and it's interesting that this book does explore that. And if you're listening today, maybe take a moment and think to yourself, what would you do, right, audience? So
people talk about that they say, well, how are you going to feel about this on your deathbed, right? Are you going to really are you going to be thinking about that client? Are you going to be thinking about, no, you'll think about those moments you've lost, you can't get back now. And now you've got 2 weeks. What client? What's the purpose? What's the long game in having a client and doing work? What is it for? Because it won't actually come to an actual end. As far as like the job won't, or this won't, like there's no finish line for that. But I think you're right. I think there's a sense of denial that people would just go to work because they have nothing else. And I think there's even a character in the book that kind of, they don't know what else to do. And I find that in some ways sad, actually. It's not a judgment. It's just, they've set themselves up that's all that they have. Maybe they've devoted their entire life to that. And then at the expense of relationship, right? And then now they don't. So what I would tell someone is like, go rekindle that relationship, then because this other stuff is meaningless. The connection with that person is it's incredible. You should try to pursue that, and you can mend things, even because that's what I talk about too. There's lots of forgiveness, people going back, rekindling relationships that they had lost, and it's asking for forgiveness. And people, some people they won't, and some people like, yes, I forgive you. Let's just be together in these moments, right? These fleeting moments that we have left. So, go ahead. I went long-winded there.
Yeah, no, I was just playing devil's advocate because I feel like if this happened in our day and age, people would be like, there's no meteor coming, like it's, how do you know for sure? So that's why I was like, okay, people would be in denial and still just carrying on everyday life, I feel like. But that's just aside the point. And I like what you were also.
Well, that's a great point, by the way. And I didn't really get into that, but that's actually a really good point. There would be
in the world you created, everybody accepted it, and it was more so, what's our choice now? And they were
you're right though. There is like definitely a cross section today that's fake news, right? Like that's not really happening. That's the government conspiracy. Like no guys, wasn't there a movie on Netflix or something that's related to that?
There really was, like Don't Look Up, I think it was.
Yeah. They're kind of exploring. That's what their whole thing was, like kind of exploring that deeply, like how a certain segment of society could be lulled into thinking like, no, there actually is no, even when they're actually seeing it, right? Like they've got this, they're being gaslit to the point of cognitive dissonance, and they're like, there's literally you could see it. You're like, nope, that's not real. That's
not what it is. Yeah. But yeah, all that aside though, in the world you created for Cries of a Dying World, it is very true. And you do a really great job of exploring these questions and, kind of think, do you rekindle these relationships? Do you not? I know, Ethan, for example, our main character, works to be with his son, and that's a whole, huge part of the book. I'm wondering if we want to transition a little bit into the writing process of this book. You said a lot of it came from your own experiences, but did you follow an outline? Did you let the characters guide the story? How do you structure a narrative with such an emotional weight to it?
The outline question is always asked a lot from creative writing. I don't really use outlines when it comes to fiction. If I've ever tinkered with, and I've helped people with some nonfiction things, I think outlines can be a good structure. I think notes versus a hard structured outline for something fiction, just because I feel it's a left brain, right brain thing when it comes to outlines. And I feel that this can impact, I think, more inexperienced writers or new writers when they spend a tremendous amount of time writing an outline, that when they go to the actual writing process, I think writing is very organic. I think things just kind of come once you got to get into the flow state of it. I've always caught it for years, like tapping into the ether, and everyone knows when you're writing, you've been there, where that flow state kicks in, and situations and scenes, characters and dialogue is just coming to you, and you don't even know where it's coming from. It's just there, and it's just showing up in your head, and you're just putting it on the page. It's just flowing. And I feel that an outline, so I do is I write organically, so to speak, and I just let the characters kind of drive the story. But an outline can be disruptive if you've spent a tremendous amount of time on it, and then you get to a point where you're flowing, and then your characters want to go here, but your outline says it's here. Then you're stuck at this, like, typically writers will stop and they'll go, what do I do here? Because I'm not supposed to go down this road. And you either have to alter your outline or abandon it, or abandon where you are in that writing, in that real, genuine flow state. I say you lean into the flow state, you abandon the outline. That can be controversial, but I think that what's coming to you when you're in that flow is real. And that's the story that needs to be told. But I think it was Stephen King was talking that he can tell, I don't know how he does it. He's a master storyteller, but he can tell when someone uses an outline and when somebody doesn't. And he meant like the outline is too structured, I guess. And, this is his opinion, mine is just my opinion too. But I feel that an experienced writer can have a very structured outline and then be able to navigate around it and not be held hostage to it, versus a new writer can find themselves in a very awkward position where they've tapped that flow state and then now they're at a crossroad. Do they abandon the outline and pursue where this is supposed to go organically? I think that can be because again, it's left brain, right brain. I think you're more of an analytical thought pattern when you're creating an outline versus when you're just writing and flowing. You can't get into that when you're doing an outline. Again, it's just too analytical. And so I don't use outlines. I just have a general idea, have lots of notes, and then I just start writing a story, and lots of interesting things come from that. I typically even have the ending already in mind, and I've actually sometimes even written the ending. But I have always given myself the permission to scrap it. So anything that I've written in the back end of it, I will always say, this doesn't work. I don't worry about the time it took. I just scrap it. In fact, writing the book, I'd already had, when I wrote Cries of a Dying World, I had already had like 58,000 words written. And something felt wrong about it. And I was talking with a friend, and she goes, how do you feel? I go, something's not right. It's clunky. She goes, what do you think you should do? And I go, I should jettison the whole book. And so I did. So this version is not even the original version I'd written. I literally jettisoned. That's like a whole nother book sitting on my computer. I just said, no, I abandoned the entire manuscript instead of trying to rewrite it, and then went back and then started from square one. And just already knew how the story should be. I was like dreaming about it. And then it just kind of ended up on the page. And I'm very happy with how it came out. But it's funny that I'd left 58,000 or whatever words just sitting, just abandoned them because it just didn't feel right. I hope that answered the question, but
it did.
Not a fan of outlines, not a fan of too structured outlines.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. I personally am more on the outline side because I just have a fear of forgetting to add something, or maybe my plot starts to get too convoluted if I'm, halfway through and I realize, wait, something's not right here. Sometimes it saves me some time, but I definitely know what you mean, because if you're too focused on that structure, you're hindering your own creativity and you're holding yourself in a box. So maybe at the end of the day, it's a matter of giving yourself that permission to amend as you go, kind of how you mentioned yourself. You wrote your conclusions, for example, but you need to be willing to modify it as needed. So I guess
and I think again, you're an experienced writer, and so the advice I give is geared more toward new writers that can find themselves. It can almost paralyze them. Like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I think the flow state is that's where the sweet stuff is. That's where like the nectar of the gods is. Like when you tap into that when you're writing, it's incredible what comes out onto the page. I've created whole characters that I've then created spin-offs from a character I just created out of nowhere. There was in the New World series, I knew I felt like I needed to add this one character to the scene. And so I'm just writing, I'm thinking about it, like, oh yeah, okay, it's just a woman. I kind of was just typing like, this way she should look at, her name will be Lexi. I like that. Lexi, she's got a little bit of an edge to her, and I'm just writing her. And I just felt like, I really like her. She's like, and then the fans loved her. This is my second book of the New World series. And then they loved her so much. I loved her. The fans loved her that I was like, I'm going to give her an origin story called Nemesis. I'm going to write a whole series that's just her. She was supposed to be like a throwaway character. I just needed her to kind of be in this scene, to act as like this diversion as the one character was escaping. And I just grew to really love her. Again, the fans love her, like I said, that I kept her going within the main canon of books as a character. And then she ended up getting her own series.
Yeah, I love
and that was just a character born out of just writing in that flow, and just like, I need this character, and then boom, like it was like she was destined to be there. She was destined to like exist, and she does. She's wonderful. I love her a lot.
Yeah, and it's really clear that you not only have a passion for what you do, but you're immersing yourself in this world so much that you take one of the characters and you run with it. I think that's an amazing thing that you do. Clearly, you do let the characters guide your story. Then you feel emotionally connected to one. You let that. You see where the story goes just based on, okay, what is this person going to do? What's going to happen? Because I know my characters. I know my story. So.
Well, how do you feel like that? Do you feel connected to your character? I feel really connected to my characters. They're like I know them. Like they're maybe it's because I'm schizophrenic. No, I'm joking. Like I was like I hear other voices in my head, but I do. I do feel like emotionally connected to them. And so when they die, it's painful. Like, it's like they're gone. Like, they're never going to be able to write them again. Like, their little banter or their little mannerisms, all that things are gone. Like, it's sad. It actually is very, because I do get connected. So do you find yourself the same way?
Well, truthfully speaking, I'm a ghostwriter, so I write as my clients, their ideas and so on and so forth. And many of the times I'm also doing nonfiction. So it's a little bit different, but I definitely relate to what you are saying. I know what it must be like. I can almost imagine you having a candlelit dinner on your own after having to say bye to a character.
Have you ever thought of writing fiction?
Oh, I would love to. And I have. I've done romance, for example, for other clients, cozy mysteries, a couple thrillers. So, same thing. I get it completely. But I guess it's a little different when you're not the one making up the story yourself, but more so kind of rolling with it with your clients. But, one day I would absolutely love to. But at this time, not quite yet. But it's coming up. So,
Okay.
Where you're coming from, though. But yeah, I really do enjoy, making characters up and kind of going with the flow, and just like you are, finding your passion in it. So I'm wondering if we can chat a little bit more about Cries to the Dying World before, we move along with this. Do you happen to have a copy of it with you by any chance? I know you have.
I do. It's just sitting over here. Yeah.
Oh, please take a look. Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let me grab it. There we go.
I always like to invite authors on to show the cover, because this is something that's, a core part of the book. We don't like to judge books by their covers, but it's, something that previews it.
Oh, you should judge a book by its cover. I think covers are very important, by the way. I really do. I think you've got this one opportunity to kind of bring a reader. Because I run into new authors, I really don't care if my book sells. I don't care if I make money. I'm like, you should care about that. Well, maybe you don't like money, or you could care less about money, but in order for your book to sell, it's one of these things, you got to want it to sell. And so a cover is a way that a reader will make its first connection with it. And yeah, I think the cover is beautiful. It's kind of gloomy and doomy, which I kind of dig, for
but it's also vibrant with like the flames and all that. So it's eye-catching, and that's exactly what you need. And if you didn't know what the book was about, that cover kind of gives it away with the meteor. I love it.
Yeah, and titles too. I think having the right title is important as well. Finding those right words to put on there.
What kind of tips would you offer anybody listening for coming up with the titles and the covers? What's your process?
I sit and think about it a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have any like real actionable tips. Like if you did A, it'll be, A and B, it'll equal C.
It's situational, so.
Yeah, and I do a lot of what I call mental writing when I go on like hikes and go on walks. And the few times I've ever had like writer's block, I don't really get it, but if I ever get stuck, I think the best advice I would ever get, this is very actionable information I give somebody, is just get up and move your body. Get up and just walk. Just do something. Get away from your computer and just go somewhere. But I do a lot of mental writing when I walk. I have to get away from the computer, and then I just think. When I walk, I'm not listening to anything. I'm just with myself, absorbing the environment wherever I'm at. And that's when titles come to me. I like titles that are pretty just right to it, but not too deep. Like my book, The End, I think it was being too artsy. I had first called it The Pebbled Shore. And that is taken from a sonnet from Shakespeare, which essentially means like the end, so to speak, like things are coming to a conclusion. This is sonnet number 60. And I thought that it just wasn't, how do I say this, people weren't going to understand what it was about. And I was like, well, maybe I should just be more in your face. And so I just called it The End. I don't know if The Pebbled Shore, maybe in an alternate universe somewhere, The Pebbled Shore did really well. But The End, like it was right to the point, like this is what it's about. And again, the book, its sales and its success speak for itself now. So.
Really cool. No, you do have a knack for that, and I can see how it does take a lot of thought. And you're right, sometimes you just need to take a little walk, think it over, and ponder and weigh all of the different options. So yeah, you're right though, it is a very important thing to consider, especially because that's what everyone's going to always refer to the book as at the end of the day. So So all that being said, I'm wondering, do you happen to have any other pieces of advice or tips for the listeners today about the writing process or the publishing world or anything in between?
Yeah, I know like anyone who's an aspiring writer, I would just go right to don't put like artificial obstacles in your way. Was
Mm.
it Shakespeare that mentioned just write when he was asked the same question, what advice he would give a new writer? Just write, just sit down and start writing. A lot of writers will put a lot of artificial obstacles by saying, well, I need to first go to creative writing class, or I first need to have a degree in this or this. Like those are just barriers you're placing in front of yourself. And if you've got a story to tell, just start writing the story. You'll figure out a lot of the stuff along the way. Also, when you're writing a story, don't start thinking about where am I going to sell this? Thinking about things that like just get the first, let's just write the story, write the book first. And then you can worry about all those issues later. You can worry about cover and editors and all that. Once you get the book first, and then you've got the problem about finding an editor who can edit it for you. That's something too, by the way. You got to have a great editor.
Right. Yeah, and I guess it goes along with finding the right person, right? The agent might not work well, find the right one. Editor too, find the right one for you. So.
Yes, you cannot self-edit. There's no such thing as self-editing. I went to a writers conference and I was speaking there, and I said, "Did you get it edited?" She goes, "Yeah, I edited it." I said, "Yes, it's edited." I was like, "Okay." What did your editor say? "Well, I edited it myself." I said, "Well, then it's not edited."
Yeah,
she didn't like my comments.
You need a second
because
pair
you
of
can't
eyes.
self-edit. What's that?
You need a second pair of eyes on it. You're too close to your own work. You might not see the same.
How many times have you written something and you read it and you're like, it's missing words, and your brain just puts those words in there, or you just don't see the typos or the grammar. You just don't see it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you need those extra set of eyes. You absolutely do. And then also understanding the difference between copy editors, line editors, and developmental editors. Those are key. Some writers really need a developmental editor to kind of step in and really work them through the whole book, specifically if the book's got a very complicated plot. Developmental editors are really good. And I always recommend getting that the developmental editor will be someone who's also a really good writer too. They're good storytellers as well, because if you're needing one for your novel, have another storyteller that will take a look at it and understand it. I think developmental editors get overlooked a lot. They just want the copy and line editing done. So that's a lot of advice, and I'll stop at that.
No, it's very good advice, and you're right. You need to get your manuscript looked at from every angle to make sure it's absolutely the best it could be. That goes from the small stuff like the proofreading to the big stuff like developmental. It needs to, if you really want your manuscript to succeed and you want it to be at the top level possible it could be, that's what you have to do. You have to take those steps. I completely agree.
Yeah, people overlook and I fell victim to this early on. They worry about the marketing is important, but if you're marketing a subpar product, eventually you're going to get found out. Eventually if your product is not good, there's a lot of technical issues with it, because you skip the process of actually having an editor, and you do the best marketing campaign in the world, well, again, you're going to get found out. The people will buy it, and then they'll go, "Oh, this book is not very good. It needs a lot more work." And then the bad reviews come in, and then all those resources you poured into marketing, you just got trashed, and it's because if you're going to spend those resources on marketing and promotion, put out the best quality book you can, not just write the best story you possibly can write, but then make sure it's polished correctly. And that's where you got to have a great editor to do that, and a great proofreader, and even a great formatter, so it's formatted correctly. So a badly formatted book will make the reading experience just catastrophic. And again, you get too many complaints, and then the bad reviews come in, and then it crashes.
Right. Yes. If you take the time to do it correctly, it's only going to benefit you in the long run. I really appreciate all these tips, and thank you so much for sharing not only that, but some insights into one of your many books and also the journey to publishing too. I think this has been an amazing conversation that jumps between a lot of different aspects that writers today do need to hear about. So it's an honor. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us.
Well, Danielle, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Of course. And, I really do enjoy all this. And everybody, if you are interested in learning a little bit more about G. Michael Hopf's books and his publishing house, everything in between, where can we find you? What are the best links to get in touch?
Just reach out to me at my website, gmichaelhopf.com. That's the best place. And all the books a lot of them are in Barnes and Nobles and other bookstores, and others I've done self-published and just Amazon. Amazon's that's where everything is nowadays.
Perfect. Okay. Well, in that case, we're going to put the link to that in the description box of this podcast today. So when we're all done, everyone, go ahead and click on over and check it out. So with all of that, listeners, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I think it's been a very insightful conversation. We've learned all about G. Michael Hopf's journey from military service to publishing to the books. We know that when you align your mission with your message, you don't just build a career, you build a legacy. Thank you for joining us on Authors on Mission podcast. And if today's conversation sparks something in you, don't wait. Get started writing. Start your story strong. Until next time, stay mission focused, stay resilient, and keep turning the page on your own incredible writing journey as well. We'll see you next time, everyone.
As we close another inspiring episode, remember, every best-selling author was once just a person with a story to tell. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, inviting you to write the next chapter of your success story at authorsonmission.com. Your audience is waiting, your wisdom is ready, and your book is next.